Wanderers, it's here. The Whirlwind Barbarian is making an appearance in Season 9. Now, I know the first question everybody always asks, how far in the pits can this go, and will it be able to kill Torment 4 bosses? Now, this is just going to be for farming your Hell Tides, just like this right here. This will fly through the Infernal Hordes right here. And if you are looking to do some pit runs, you can level with this. You'll still get some very fast clears in the pit range that you're going to need in order to level up your Paragon board. Now I get it. You want to take your Whirlwind Barb and you want to go smash some bosses. There is a great solution to this. You put the Whirlwind Barb together and you go smash your Torment 4 content. You speed farm whatever you want to run at max movement speed. Then you come over to the armory right here. You set up your Mighty Throw build. And then all you have to do is just click equip. It now has a Mighty Throw build that will absolutely one-shot all of the bosses that you need to do. Now this will also be in the description of this video, so you can watch the video for it and get the planner. If you want to get this 1-2 combination so that you can do this to all of the Belial kills and still go out there and speed farm the content, this is going to be the combination for you. All right, let's break down the skills so you can see how this is going to work. We're going to put 2 points in the Lunging Strike just so we can move down to the next tier. We're going to be maxing out Whirlwind. All of your damage is going to come from Whirlwind. This will not come from any lucky hit chance, will not come from any summons, no earthquakes. The only quakes that are in the build are just there to buff the damage from Whirlwind. We're going to get all of our damage straight from Whirlwind. We're going to be taking Furious Whirlwind. This is going to apply bleed whenever we hit with Whirlwind. This is an important part of the build. We're going to be maxing out as much Fury as we can because we need to stack as much Fury as possible. So Tempered Fury is going to get maxed. 3 points into Imposing Presence. This is going to give us some max life. 3 points into Martial Vigor. This is going to give us some damage reduction against elites. We're going to take Rallying Cry all the way down through Strategic Rallying Cry. This is going to give us a source of Fortify. We're going to be taking Iron Skin. Now, Iron Skin is just going to be there for a little extra heal, a little bit of barrier, 1 point in Outburst. This will come into play when we get into the Paragon board. Challenging Shout is going to give us some DR and some max life. We're going to max out all of points into Warcry. We want to get as much damage out as we can. Warcry is going to give us additional damage. Then we're going to go all the way down through Power of Warcry. It'll gain an additional 10% damage bonus when we have 6 enemies around or more. We're going to put 3 points into Booming Voice. This is going to give us additional duration on our shouts. Then we're going to put 3 points into Guttural Yell. When monsters are affected by our shouts, they're going to deal 12% less damage. We're going to put 1 point into Aggressive Resistance so that we can max out Prolific Fury. We want to be able to get as much Fury generation as we can so we can just keep on spinning. We'll talk about how to keep on spinning when we get into the runes for the build. We're going to max out Pit Fighter for some additional damage to close enemies and some damage reduction. We're going to max out Slaying Strikes. This is going to give us some damage to injured and healthy enemies. Injured is anything below 35% life, and healthy is anything above 80% life. 1 point into Thick Skin so we can unlock Counter Offensive. Whenever our Fortify is more than 50% of our maximum life, we're going to deal additional damage. 3 points into Duelist. This is going to give us some additional attack speed when we're dual wielding. Now, we're going to be dual wielding because we're going to be running the Ramalodnes. The Ramalama Ding Dong is a huge source of damage for this build. 3 points into Invigorating Fury. This is going to heal us when we spend 100 Fury. Then we're going to put 5 points into Wrath of the Berserker, all the way down through Supreme Wrath of the Berserker. They changed Wrath of Berserker this season so that it does not interrupt whatever you're doing. So it will not stop you from attacking. It will not interrupt your whirlwinding. We can keep on spinning and use Wrath of Berserker. It does not do that with Call of the Ancients. This also gives us additional damage, additional fury generation, unstoppable, and berserking for 10 seconds, and a pull. So it's going to pull all of the monsters in that are around us. This is a very, very impressive ultimate. It is really, really necessary for this build. We're going to be maxing out Wallop here. This is going to give us some additional damage when we're using a bludgeoning weapon. We're going to be using Ramalodnes, and we're also going to be using a one-handed mace. This way, we can make sure that we're taking advantage of having that bludgeoning weapon on. Then we're going to take 1 point into Unbridled Rage. Your core skills are going to deal additional damage, but they're going to cost a lot more fury. This is why it's incredibly important that we are going to be putting as much fury generation as we can into this build. So that's the skill tree. Let's take a look at the Paragon board. For the starter board, we're going to be running Challenger. This is just going to be a double multiplier. What that means is that you're going to deal additional damage to elites, and when this becomes a legendary glyph, which is level 46, you're also going to deal additional damage to elites as well. In the next board, we're going to be running Warbringer. This is going to give us Fortify whenever we spend Fury, and we're going to be running Wrath inside of this board. Critically strikes... Skills that critically strike are going to generate Fury. That's really important. We're also going to get increased critical strike damage from the legendary bonus here. In the next board, we're going to be running Blood Rage. Whenever we're berserking, we're going to deal additional 45% increased damage. For your glyph, we're going to be running Ambidextrous. This is going to give us 8% increased damage while dual wielding, and we're also going to get an increased damage bonus. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. This is going to give us 20% increase to vulnerable damage. We're not going to really do any overpower here, so it's not going to take advantage of the second half of this, but we still will get that 20% increase. Then we're going to be running Marshal inside of this board as well. This will reduce the cooldowns of our non-shout skills by 2 seconds every time that we use a shout. So when we use Rallying Cry, War Cry, or Challenging Shout, the cooldown of our Wrath of Berserker and our Iron Skin are going to be reduced by 2 seconds. This will help us get our Wrath of Berserker off of cooldown a lot more often. And in the final board, we're going to be running Weapon Master. Now this one here, a lot of people ask, we're not swapping weapons, so why are we using this one? The only thing that you gain from swapping weapons is going to be the 8% Fury. We still will deal that 30% increased damage to injured and healthy enemies all the time, no matter what. So that's why we're running this board here. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Revenge. This is another double multiplier damage glyph. Dealing damage with thorns to an enemy is going to increase your damage up to 15%. That's why we took Outburst inside of the skill tree. Outburst gives us thorns damage, so that's where we take advantage of this here. This will also give us an increase in damage as a legendary modifier when you get the legendary glyph. For the gear. Now, there's going to be several different versions inside of the planner. If you've never looked at a build guide planner, this is going to be in the description of this video. This is definitely going to be a better way to follow along with the build. This is going to give you everything that you're going to need in order to set up the build. You can even come to gear stats and you can see where to put your masterworking, what tempers to put on. This is much better than having to pause the video and then restart it and then pause it again. It has all your seasonal powers, all of your jewels, all of your runes, everything that you're going to need. You can go to the skill tree and you can zoom in, you can zoom out, so you can see exactly where things are going to go, just in case we miss something on the video. This will have the most updated gear as well. So if the gear that I'm wearing isn't perfect, which normally it isn't, you can find what the perfect gear is going to be inside of this planner. Now, I have versions with and without mythic uniques, so you can follow along with whatever you are going to be using. Make sure that you read through the bottom of this so that you can take advantage of all of the other information that is put into the planner, including rune combinations, uniques to use, mythic uniques to use. There's a lot inside of these guides. So in the description of this video, make sure that you click on that. We're going to cover the mythic unique version of this. Follow along with the planner if you don't have any of the mythics. It is definitely doable without them. We're going to be running the Air of Perdition. This just makes it really, really easy to get all of the stats that you need. It's got movement speed. This is supposed to be a fast build. We're going to be running at 200% movement speed all the time. This helps you get there. It also helps you hit your critical strike cap so that you can make sure that you get your critical strike chance up to 100. This is also going to give you a lucky hit chance, which lucky hit chance is going to be super important for this. Whirlwind inherently has a very low lucky hit chance, so anywhere we can add it in is just going to make this a little bit better. The reason that it's going to make it so much better is we're going to be running the Rage of Haragoth. Inflicting Bleed has up to a 60% chance to reduce your cooldowns of your skills. Now that is on a lucky hit. So every time that we hit with Whirlwind, we have a 30% chance to proc a lucky hit. Once we've procced a lucky hit, then we're going to have a 60% chance to reduce our cooldowns. So that's why getting more lucky hit chance is going to be really great for this build. You want to get something that has closest to 60% that you possibly can. The greater affixes actually aren't as important as getting that 60%. So if I had something that was higher, that was only a single GA, I would have it on over this 3 GA right here. For the gloves here, we're going to be running Gore's Devastating Grasp. Whirlwind is going to explode every 3 seconds for 600% increased damage as fire. Critical strikes with Whirlwind reduce the time until the next explosion by 0.4 seconds down to 1 second. So if we hit enough monsters and we critically strike enough, that's why critical strike is so important with this build, we're going to have this explosion every 1 second instead of every 3 seconds. This adds ranks to Whirlwind, it adds movement speed, it adds attack speed, which Whirlwind does scale with attack speed. The more attack speed you have, the faster you spin, the more you crit, the more you explode this Gore's Devastating Grips. For the pants, we're going to be running to Bolt's Will. You're going to deal 20% increased damage while unstoppable. Wrath of the Berserker is going to make us unstoppable for 10 seconds. We're going to be unstoppable basically all the time, so we're going to take advantage of that. It also is going to give us maximum resources, which is incredibly important, and we'll explain that in just a second why that's so important. For the boots, we're going to be running Wild Bolts. Every 2 seconds, distant enemies are pulled into you, and they're going to take 10% increased damage for 3 seconds. This effect cannot occur while stealth, but we're not going to be stealth with this build. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Maximum Life, Movement Speed, and Warcry. If you feel comfortable and you want to drop that maximum life and add on strength for a little bit more damage, you absolutely can. For your tempers here, we're going to be running Movement Speed and Whirlwind Size. For your bludgeoning weapon, we're going to be running Earthquakes. Now, as you can see, we are not running Ground Stomp, but you don't need to run Ground Stomp if we're going to be using runes. Now, if you do not have runes, you're going to have to take off Iron Skin and you're going to have to put on Ground Stomp. Unfortunately, it's going to change around the way that the build works because we will not be able to continuously spin with Ground Stomp. So there are a couple tweaks that you can do, but it will interrupt the way that this build is functioning itself. The reason that we're running this aspect right here, while standing in an earthquake and for 4 seconds afterwards, you're going to deal 120% increased damage. This is the biggest multiplier on an aspect for all around damage that you can get on the Barbarian. So that's why we're going to be running this. The earthquakes themselves aren't really going to do any damage whatsoever. All of it's going to come from Whirlwind. For your affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, and then Chance to Restore Primary Resources. Now, for the overworld portion of this, you really don't need that Chance to Restore Primary Resources. So if you're just using it for that, you can put something like Critical Strike damage on here. For your tempers, we're going to be running Critical Strike damage, and we're going to be running Whirlwind has a chance to deal double damage. Whirlwind cannot overpower, so we cannot use anything on this build that's going to overpower. For your first dual wield weapon, we're going to be running Ramalodnes. Ramalodnes is a massive source of damage, and the most important part of this is going to be the unique aspect. Skills using this weapon are going to deal 0.5% increased damage per point of fury that you have. It drains 10 fury per second. Now, if you look here, I have 337 fury. That can go up if I got better masterworking on my gear and with all of the elixirs that we're going to be using. So let's say I get up to 400 maximum fury. This gives me 200% increased damage when we're using it at maximum fury. With the way the build's set up, we will always be at maximum fury, so you always get that massive source of damage. The next dual wield weapon we're going to be using, we're going to be running Vehement Brawler. Casting an ultimate skill is going to increase our damage by up to 30%. This is just going to give us a little bit of cooldown to Wrath of Berserker and increase the damage by a little bit, but Wrath of Berserker doesn't do all that much damage. We're just going to be using it to reduce that cooldown so we can have it up more often. For your affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Max Life, Critical Strike damage, and then for your tempers, we're going to be running Critical Strike damage and Wallop. For your slashing weapon, I have on the Grandfather. This actually isn't the strongest version of this build. Running a weapon with an aspect on it is actually going to be just a little bit stronger. Now, we're not talking a lot of damage, but the Grandfather actually makes it a lot easier to run this. You don't have to worry about tempers. You get all stats, and you get maximum life. You get maximum resources. The damage really isn't that much, but having all that extra all stats is actually going to play into you having more fury generation. The more willpower you have, the more resource generation you have. So this plays a really big part in that, which is why we're going to be running it for this version of the build. For the ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Starless Sky. Spending your primary resource reduces the cost of your next skill and increases the damage it's going to do by 10%. This only lasts for 3 seconds, but goes up to 50%. Now, we're going to be spending Fury with Whirlwind very often, so we'll have this buff up 100% of the time. This also allows us to run Unbridled Rage. For the next ring, we're going to be running Bold Chieftain. This is going to allow us to have very, very short cooldown timers on all of our shouts. And for your affixes here, we're going to be running Strength. The chance to make enemies vulnerable is incredibly important for this. This is our only source of vulnerable damage. This is going to proc all the time, so we really don't have to worry about that small little chance. If you wanted to put one Masterworking crit into this instead of it being in the critical strike damage, you can do that too. For your tempers here, we're going to be running Wrath of the Berserker cooldown and then critical strike damage. For the amulet, we're going to be running Dire Whirlwind. This is the reason that we need to run Wrath of Berserker. Whirlwind's critical strike and critical strike damage are going to be increased by 15%. That can go up to 75% increased critical strike chance and damage. So we actually only need to have 25% critical strike chance on your gear, and you will be at cap. Now, I'm obviously over cap because I have the Ring of Starless Sky and we're running Air Perdition, but this will just make up any difference that you have as long as you're channeling Whirlwind. It also gives you a 75% increase to critical strike damage until we stop channeling. That's why using Wrath of Berserker to not interrupt our channel is incredibly important for this build. If we were running something like Call of the Ancients, it would stop us from spinning, and then we wouldn't take advantage of this. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Strength, Movement Speed, Counteroffensive, and then for your tempers, we're going to be running Wrath of Berserker and Movement Speed as well. Now, if you come down here, and we're going to be running 80% over our movement speed cap, so I can probably change that temper out with the way that this build is set up. But if we were to swap out the helmet, then you wouldn't be able to take off that movement speed. Using Whirlwind and casting Whirlwind actually gives you a penalty to your movement speed, so you're going to need to be at about 250%. That will allow you to spin at maximum movement speed the entire time. For the jewels, now if you're playing on a seasonal character, we're going to have jewels. We're going to be running the Myriad Stone. After you cast your Catalyst, if it's on an ultimate skill, you're going to gain 30% increase attack speed. Then we're going to just fly through spinning. We're going to be running Idle from Below. We're going to gain 6% primary stats and 6% maximum life. And we're going to be running Will Breaker. You're going to deal 40% increased physical damage for 6 seconds. This is every time that you hit an enemy or they're crowd controlled. For bosses, it's going to only affect them that first 6 seconds of the fight, and then any time that they're staggered. For the other gems, now we're going to be running rubies in your armor. You do not want to put your runes inside of your armor. Strength or any main stat for any class is going to be a multiplicative damage increase for you. For the barbarians, it's also going to give you armor, so it's nice and easy to hit your armor cap. You do not want to put your runes in there because putting runes into your armor and then putting something like critical strike damage gems into your weapons is only going to be a little bit of additive damage. You're going to lose out on a lot of damage if you don't put your gems into your armor. Speaking of runes, for this first combination, we're going to be running Bach Lum. Now, there's different rune combinations for different variants of the build. Pit pushing is going to be a little bit different than it will be for your overworld content. So this is your overworld setup right here. We're going to be running Bach Lum, so every time that we travel 5 meters, we're going to gain primary resources. So if you watch here as we run around, my resources are now slowly going up. This is going to allow you to stay at cap 100% of the time. Then we're also going to be running Igni Tech. We're going to store offerings every 0.3 seconds, and then whenever we cast our shouts, it's going to cast an earthquake. Now we're going to gain that increased damage from having the earthquake aspect on. For the seasonal powers, how this is going to work, Our Wrath of Berserker is right here. This is why it is flashing purple, because we have put our catalyst on our Wrath of Berserker section here. Now we cannot have more than one catalyst equipped, so we're going to put on Disintegrate. This is going to put down a beam right when we cast our ultimate skill here. Using this ability will now give us Reactive Ooze. That's going to give us 20% increased maximum resource generation, which is huge for this build. It's also going to activate Bloody Charm. It's going to execute non-boss enemies with 20% or less life. With Disintegrate, it's actually going to double that amount for non-elite enemies. So any normal enemy, if they have 40% life left and we run that beam through them, which we're going to be spinning around in circles anyway, it's going to immediately execute those monsters. Elites will all be gone at 20% life. We're going to be running Nebulous here. This is going to give us some damage reduction. If you wanted to throw on something else for a little bit of damage, you can definitely do that too. But this is going to help us stay alive inside of whatever content we're running, because if you did see, we were a little bit short on resistances, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. For your weapon expertise, we're going to be running your two-handed axe. This is the only one that you use in every single build. You do not have to have a two-handed axe equipped. This is the only one that will give you multiplicative damage. If you use something like, let's say, your two-handed sword, the only thing that it's going to give you is plus 20% of your direct damage is going to be bleeding. It's not going to be a multiplier. It's just going to give you a little bit of additive damage. So we are going to be running your two-handed axe so that you can get that multiplicative damage to vulnerable enemies. For your mercenaries here, we're going to be running Subo unless you absolutely need Rahir for this build, because it's an overworld build and a farming build. I just use it to look at the map and see where the monsters are. If you need Rahir for either the armor or the resistances, you can pop him on. But we're going to be running a wire trap ready at hand. This is some increased movement speed, which we really don't need because this build is so fast, all the way down through opening fire. This is going to give us a 25% increased critical strike damage for anybody that is hit by cover fire. For your reinforcements here, we're going to be running Variana with Bloodthirst. This is some additional attack speed whenever we use Whirlwind every 22 seconds. And for your consumables here, so that we know what we're going to be running, we're going to be running Soothing Spices. This is going to bump up our resistances just a little bit, but we're still running really low. Fortunately, with the overworld content that we're doing, we're just going to be flying past everything. The explosions are going to go off very quickly and things are just going to die. And we're also going to be running Redamine Buzz. This is going to bring us up to about 21,000 life. And then when we pop our Challenging Shout, we're going to pop up to 25,000. And we're going to be running Ancient Times for some additional strength. That puts us up to this 4,100. That's because of the GA here with the massive amount of strength that we're gaining. And for your Elixir, we're going to be running Resourcefulness. This is going to reduce the cost of Whirlwind, which is perfectly fine, helps us spin longer. And more importantly, this is going to give us 25 maximum resources. With this on, I now have 362 maximum resources, so this is going to help give us more damage. Now let's talk about the gameplay loop, because this is going to be a nice and easy gameplay loop, which is what I really love about this build. This build is super fun, super relaxed, so if you're just looking to get out there and just farm some monsters, this is really all that you're going to need. I have a very strong Lunging Strike build. It is incredibly fast and it is incredibly fun, but I just find myself farming on Whirlwind because this is all you have to do. You just pop your shouts whenever they come up, and as you can see, because of the Rage of Haragoth, we get some very, very fast cooldowns. So you can either spam them and keep up all your buffs, keep up all your shouts, or you can just spin and let Whirlwind do its thing. This is the only rotation that you need. We never run out of Fury. So how to maintain Fury when you're spinning? Hitting enemies, obviously, we're going to have our Wrath Glyph on. Our critical strikes are going to give us more Fury. So we're going to constantly be gaining Fury here. Now, when we're just going to be spinning between monsters, we can just rotate between your Rallying Cry, which is going to increase your Fury generation. And then you can also pop your Wrath of Berserker. That gives us additional Fury generation. And now if you look here, I have maximum Fury generation, and my Fury is just sitting at max when I'm just spinning around in circles. So you're just going to alternate between those. And remember, we have our Martial Glyph on, so we can just constantly cool down Wrath of Berserker, use it again, and then we can use Rallying Cry when it comes back up. So this is how you're going to move in between enemies and in between packs if you do not want to stop spinning. So this is the Whirlwind Barb. I'm super excited to get it out to everybody. Let me know in the comments of what you think of the build. I cannot wait to see what comes next season, because in the last campfire chat, Blizzard said they made a pass at basic skills, and next season they're going to be making a pass at core skills. This has potential already this season, and I'm very excited to see if it gets a buff next season as well. That's all I got for you today. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure you share it with your friends. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm live every night. I'd love it if you stopped by, said hi, theory crafted with me. Catch you on the clip side.